Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Caldwell-Ware from GovExec, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session, Harnessing Construction Data, Achieving Project Success Under Constraints, presented by Kahua. As federal agencies manage construction capital programs, they face increasing challenges, tightening budgets, compressed timelines, and heightened demands from Congress. These constraints place significant pressure on construction. We'll explore how integrated, data-driven solutions are transforming forecasting, improving data accuracy, and fostering transparency, essential elements for ensuring accountability. Our panelists will also delve into strategies for reducing manual data aggregation, providing clearer insights into project health, and empowering teams to deliver results with greater accountability. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by two distinguished leaders, Dr. Priscilla Kelly, Lead Data Scientist, Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command. Priscilla, say hi.
Hello.
And Rob Schrack, Federal National Sales Data of Kahua. Rob?
Good morning, everyone.
All right, thank you both for joining, and let's dive right in. Today's conversation focuses on data management and how it can help agencies tackle the challenges they face in capital programs and construction projects. Can you tell, Priscilla, let's start with you. Can you tell me about your role and how you work with construction data?
So I serve as the lead data scientist for NAVFAC, the Naval Facilities Engineering System Command. And I work on the enterprise data warehouse, so the EDW. So if you ever hear me say, NAVFAC, EDW, that's really the space that I live in. We're modernizing our data layers. So we're trying to move our on-premises EDW from our hosting centers to the cloud. And this has opened up a lot of opportunities for us to modernize our process.
Amazing. Rob, same question. Tell me about your role and how you work with construction data.
I lead a team at Kahua that works with federal agencies, more around collecting the right data to give to people like Priscilla to be able to leverage that data. So I think we'll talk about how do you collect the data, how do you make it efficient to collect that data, how do you get that single source of truth, and then provide it to the data analysts and the people that can really do some amazing things with it. Backgrounding civil engineering, ran construction projects for my first part of my career, and have been out working with agencies, and in the commercial space with project management information systems focused on construction, and look forward to having a good discussion today.
Awesome, Rob. And I've definitely heard him describe himself as the construction guy. So he is ready to talk construction. Priscilla, I'm going to swing back to you. For those of the audience who aren't familiar, can you tell us about what NAVFAC does?
So we're responsible for managing and overseeing the design, construction, and maintenance of naval shore facilities. So everything from environmental management, utility management, and essential services.
And is that for the entire Navy or a geographical region?
The world.
That's the whole world, y'all.
The whole world. Big one.
All right, so with a global workspace, what are some of the challenges NAVFAC faces managing construction projects?
And that's it's part of the problem. It's also it's a great benefit, it is the mission, but I think over time we've really seen that the legacy systems, a lot of older processes have really built silos, and that has been kind of hard to make an enterprise process and solutions. And I think that a lot of effort has been put into it, and we are at a really good place to be at the current level, but a lot of it is manual. So I think this process right now, transitioning our EDW from on-prem, we're really trying to absorb a lot of the manual processes and put them into pipelines and with actual industry standards so that we can actually move forward with our processes.
I'm going to call you out. I'm going to draw out a little bit here. Manual processes. A lot of times for me, when I hear someone say manual processes, it means actual paper or emailing spreadsheets back and forth. What's your version of manual processes?
Oh, I've
both.
Seen them all. I've seen access databases. I've seen Excel sheets. I've seen, and some people go on and they well, I can find it in the system, but I don't know how to collect it from the EDW. So we've been doing it manually. And so I walk them through the process. Okay, how did you do this? What's this? And who governs that? And it's really been a massive effort. We are making progress, but I would say that has been the initial challenge, is really understanding what we're doing and how manual it really was.
And for a service as large as the Navy, are we talking about it's a different command, office to office, or like facility to facility? How different are these manual processes?
I would say probably from installation and bases, and then they run really well. And then because they can look at the system, it's when you start aggregating, that's when it seems that things tend to be more manual.
So when you want to get that enterprise-wide picture,
Exactly.
that's when you kind of bang your head against the keyboards, right? All right. Rob, you work with tons of federal agencies. How familiar do some of Priscilla's challenges sound?
Oh, they sound very familiar. I think we work, we work with large agencies well, we don't work with NAVFAC today, but we work with GSA, Department of State, the Air Force, and much smaller agencies, the Federal Reserve Board, the National Science Foundation, and they all have the challenges are just that. It's how do I aggregate data and leverage it as an asset, really? I mean, it's all about we're starting to learn what data can do for us, but you got to get the data. You got to get the accurate data. And it's hard to do when I think the way we've done it or the way most people do it today, it's a manual process. You call people up, you go meet with them, you ask them for their spreadsheets, you aggregate their spreadsheets. It's just what Priscilla talked about. And that data is very thin, right? I mean, it's just what people want to give to you. Well, the idea should be, how do we make it easy for people to do their work? And we just collect that data. How do we institute business processes that help them get their work done, help us collect the data we need, and then feed it to the data scientists who can really, again, create a wow factor. They can create, dashboards, they can leverage AI, they can leverage whatever tools they want to help us do a better job. And I think Priscilla mentioned, and deliver a better mission, right? Or meet the mission.
Yeah.
So
Deliver the project, right? It's all
Yep.
about delivering the project on time without assumably cost overruns, right? So
on time and on quality, and yeah, like you said, on budget.
yeah, on time, on quality, on budget, like the trifecta. Those are the three goals everyone has, right? But when you don't have that picture, it's pretty challenging to know where your project is. So Priscilla, can you tell us a little bit about how NAVFAC is using data to streamline project management?
So we're rebuilding our data layer, and one of the primary goals is to look at our source systems and say, what were the responsibilities of this source system? This one is the environmental management. This one is our preventive maintenance. This is work induction. And then how is this group supposed to do their induction? This. Really bucket each one of them. So that we're turning our technological solutions into more business practices and saying, okay, this is how this process goes. And one of the big things we've seen over time is a lot of efforts have done this, and then you lose governance and business drifts. Like it's just natural. Nothing is going to be exactly the same forever. So, and part of our effort is to say, who is the steward of this business process? We are not changing it unless the business steward has decided that that's what we're going to do. So that process and really building this governance from top to bottom has been our main investment. So it's interesting that we have data technology, but it's actually a people and process sort of change that we're trying to integrate.
Yeah, Rob, I saw you kind of nodding your head at some of that. Did you want to chime in there?
Yeah, people and process are always the fun part, right? Technology is relatively easy. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Priscilla said. I think in construction, one of our biggest challenges, when you're managing whether one project or a portfolio of thousands of projects, it's dealing with the external factor, right? We're dealing with vendors, we're dealing with constituencies and stuff like that. And how do we get them all to play in one place? How do we get them? How do we, with a limited amount of resources, leverage our vendors' data input, right? How can they submit information into us? It gets captured, it goes through business processes, and that data gets collected in a way that's very easy to leverage from the data perspective. That's been the challenge in the construction industry, forever. Is we're dealing with contractors, they're dealing with subcontractors, we're dealing with obviously the engineers and architects, and everybody has their own systems. And how do you aggregate your collective work to leave data that's valuable downstream by operations, by by finance, by whoever needs that information? That's a real challenge for most agencies, and we see it across all of ours. That's their goal, really, is to aggregate a single source of truth around their construction operations, really.
Priscilla, I'm going to swing back to you. sort of the gold standard for almost any data project I've ever talked to anyone about is getting real-time data, right? Or near real-time data, because real-time data is actually pretty hard, right? When you have so many stakeholders, who needs to access your data, and what are you going for real time, or are you just trying to get close to that?
At this point, we're kind of get as close as we can to it. It's very difficult because we want to expose the data. We don't want to hide anything, especially, let's say, at the enterprise data warehouse, we want to have the ability to say, this is the system data. What you see here, you should see here. The biggest problem I think we've run into historically is like open access. So then people kind of maybe dump data and then do something on top of it, and then they might leave, and then that process that they've started to integrate into their systems are gone. Like we don't know what they did. So I think in some ways we're trying to enhance transparency and collaboration by kind of trimming down how much raw access you get, but at the same time being very clear as to what you have. So one of the really fun projects that I worked on just like a week ago was, this is the pipeline for how you see the cost and schedule. And that, someone called and said, mine doesn't show up that way. What happened? And we went through together. Here's the screen. Here's how you did it. This is a filter here. What was the problem? And then I can take that and move up the chain and go, okay, for my data steward, for my business process, did they do it right? Or is there something wrong with my filter? So we're trying to get as real time as possible, but it's really been, I would say we're going to be 15 minutes a goal, but you can access it 24 hours a day.
I love that. We have goals, right? I wanted to pause you for a second because you started talking about data stewards. And we've already established there's the technology, which Rob says is easy. But but there's also people process part, and that's hard. That's changing habits, that's getting people to follow governance, buy into things, and not mess up your raw data, right? What are data stewards for you, and what's the role they play in getting the data as real time as possible?
So because we host our systems, there's a lot of opportunity to kind of come in and change it, or to say, we're changing the way we do our business. Please update the system to do A, B, and C. So we do have that kind of pipeline really already embedded into our syscom. We're trying to add a little bit more to it. So I say, okay, this person is not just in charge of making sure the website is meeting the need of my business flow. It's making sure that the data we provide you is also aligning to that need. So that data steward is supposed to really serve as a functional expert who knows how the business works, but also has some at least general knowledge and understanding of how the system is supposed to work. And that is a very special person because, from top to bottom, everyone might be doing their own thing. And we have to really say, okay, where is the hierarchy? Who owns what? And how do we make sure that we actually abide by that? So yeah, it's a very, very special role.
That's very interesting. And Priscilla is approaching this very much from the data scientist standpoint. But Rob, what are some of the crucial construction data that maybe is different or is unique project management needs compared to other project management projects?
Yeah, I mean, from construction, there's the business processes. So RFIs, submittals have to be reviewed, designs have to be reviewed, and the costs. So change is one of the things I focus on because when somebody looks at cost, typically you look at cost from a financial perspective. Well, things in your financial system have happened. Things that are in process have not happened, right? And those start with a vendor requesting a change, or the owner asking for a change in the project and requesting a quote from that vendor to make that change. And those are the types of things that can be the ghosts in the closets, or or the skeletons in the closets, right? I mean, they don't always bubble up, and those are the things that our organizations are trying to leverage or trying to expose early, so that they can mitigate risk, right? And that the challenge is, do you want it real time? When do you want that requested change to show up in a data lake for analysis and stuff like that? Like, Kahua is going to run it through the business process at some point. Just through the business process, it should be validated enough to be seen as a risk. It's not happened yet, but it should show up so people have access to that information. So that give and take of real time We want it to be real time as soon as it's vetted enough, and we want everybody, we want that to happen across the portfolio of projects. We don't want one group saying we're going to hold on to these things. There are secrets, for 2 more months, and then at the end of the project, those secrets pop out, and you find out you're way over budget, and now that crushes some senators' hopes to get another project done in their for their constituency and stuff like that. So it's about exposing that risk early and capturing that data and learning from that data over time, right? That's the value of having the data, and how that business process happened is we can learn and improve from it. We can start leveraging tools. Well, I know we're going to talk about AI probably in a little bit later, but we can start leveraging tools to really get better at what we do, right?
Now, Priscilla, I saw you emphatically nodding when Rob started talking about risk. Did you want to add something there?
That's part of it, right? Where, someone has an Excel spreadsheet and they've been doing things on their own, their own computers, and there might be something that they have that the entire organization might want to see. So yeah, there's a lot of risk, I think, hidden throughout, and we need to be very transparent and open up how our data works and how it flows. I completely agree with what he said.
I'm going to stick with you, Priscilla, because this segues. It was a good setup. Thank you for the nice setup. But what are some of the challenges you see with aggregating accurate data from all of your different project delivery teams, and frankly, just the number of stakeholders that are involved in a construction project?
I would say two things would be that silo again, where, one group is like, well, we've always done it this way, or we've always done it that way, or are you sure that was the guidance we were supposed to follow? So then when you have to aggregate up, you might not get the same data, or people are using the same fields differently. So then that's like the big, how do we define our process? And that's just going to be a challenge that we have to really keep up with throughout time, forever. I think the major second one for challenges would be, how do you actually communicate across the different, with our contractors, and then with the people that are actually managing it with us to headquarters. I think we need to speak the same language.
Does that involve a lot of training, or just, figuring out the right process?
I think it's communication.
Communication.
I really, the more I talk to people, the more I was like, well, I never heard that. And I'm like, where were you supposed to hear that? So and I think that it's very interesting, because my particular position is where the lever of data, right? So how do I make sure that that right person is moving the data up and getting the information and validating, like Rob said, we have to include that validation is part of it. Like, this is supposed to be there and move forward. But then when it comes to oh, how was I supposed to do it? I really do think that's something we need to improve upon.
That's excellent. Rob, I'm going to swing over to you. Same question about aggregating accurate data from different teams.
Well, I think Priscilla just talked about you have standard operating procedures, and I grew up in a time where there were, many agencies and many organizations out there, it's still a book on the shelf that tells you how to do your work. And that book can get huge, right? Working through federal agency regulations and the types of stuff you need to do. So, one of the values of a business process system is you're taking your SOPs and you're plugging them into a system and enabling everybody. And if you can make that easy for them to use and you can make it efficient, guess what? They'll use it, right? And if they use it, you have that data, and you have that data that gets validated, along its path. That's probably why most of our customers come to Kahua is they're looking to really put a system in place that follows their procedures or enforces their procedures. Now, when you do that change, the people are the big change. People are the ones that resist change more than anyone else, right? Helping them through that change management process is a big part of it. And again, so you need to find systems that can be flexible enough to work the way that they need to work. And one of the challenges is it's also a time to rethink what you've always done. I've heard plenty of people like, this is the way we've always done it. Well, you always did it because it was the technology or the lack of technology of the day, right? You didn't have something, so we're all creative people, and most of the people in construction are engineers, and they like building things. They like building spreadsheets. They like building Excel and access databases. They make systems, but they make 15 or 20 siloed systems, and that's the problem. So how do you get a system that can bring them all in, and including those externals, those vendors, and help you leverage their input, and then leverage it up the chain of command into the data warehouse and on into the value that it can ultimately be.
Priscilla was nodding emphatically when you said, changing the people, getting people on board, I think is actually a better way to say it. We're not going to change our people, but getting them to adopt new ways. What are have you cracked that nut, Priscilla? Have you figured out how to get even the reluctant on board?
It's been hard, but I think it's exactly like you said, Rob, like the skills that people have put together, the silos that they've made are not because they're trying to make things hard. They literally were solving problems with the tools that they had. So one of the things that we found is, some people make some really amazing things, and they've been emailing it and manually doing it every week, and they don't want to do it anymore. So one thing that we've been talking with them is, okay, how can you see what we've done? So, how do we expose our code, have open GitLab, have a guest come in and see what we've done and like validate it over time. But at the same time, know that your process is surviving. Like, you trust that we're going to take your process and put it in here, and please be a part of its governance. That has really been the way to do it, because you don't want someone to feel like everything that they've done is gone. They've built it from the ground up. Let's incorporate it.
I love how, as we talk about construction projects, fundamentally building, it's just layers and layers of building. There's a bunch of people solving their different problems, right? Whether it's data or the actual projects. Jill, I'm going to stick with you for a moment. What would you say some of the key benefits are to using integrated data-driven solutions for managing your projects?
The biggest thing I've noticed is visibility and accountability. People can see things better. A lot of data has been hidden where someone had to go in the system. They didn't know where to find it. It was actually buried into the system, and a lot of people didn't know how to do it. So we had spent a lot of time working with the stakeholders and saying, okay, or the system stakeholders, and saying, okay, how do you get this view from your website, and how do we expose it properly? And so that's where it's really a conversational process with everybody, from the system to the front end to the users to the people who want to see it in management. Integrated, it's integrating the people. And once we've done that, a lot of our processes have just solved themselves, because someone will come new and say, I want to be part of it. How do I do it? And we're like, hey, it's already done. And it really worked out well. It happened a couple months ago, and it was like, that was proof of the value. We've integrated a whole process. Anyone can now join it.
And I assume without the really big binder to tell them exactly what to do, right?
No more
Rob,
binders. We're done.
no more binders. Rob, I'm going to ask you a very similar thing. What are you seeing some of your federal partners see as they go to this single source of truth?
It is the accountability and the ability to deliver information to their constituents, right? Near real time. They don't really want it real time. They want it near real time, and they want it to be accurate. I think it's the ability to mitigate risk. There is no agency that has enough money to do all the projects they want to do, right? One bad project can kill many other very important projects, right? You run out of budget, you're not going to start that project. So being able to mitigate risk early is what the leadership wants to be able to do. And then, leverage that data to continuously improve the level of service you're providing your agency, I think is also, people want to improve, people want to go home, people want to get their work done and go home at night, right? And that, how do you help people do that and live a better life? That's the kind of things that management's looking for. How do I track the right people, right? If we're all working on, spreadsheets and pencils and papers and, email and the sneaker mail, the kids coming out of school, they don't want to do that, right? They're used to being efficient. They're used to being digital, and making tools that people my age can use, as well as the young kids, and giving them a place to innovate and continuously innovate. That brings them in. So there's a bunch of reasons, or a bunch of benefits to, I'd say, digitalize. I can't even say it. Digitizing your processes. There's a bunch of them, but ultimately it comes down to accountability and the ability for people, to service information to your constituents. That's the ultimate goal, but there's many other benefits too.
All right, Priscilla, have you gotten the kind of visibility into project financials that are helping you manage costs and identify potential overruns early?
We're actually at a very interesting time where we're flipping from an older system to ERP, so Navy ERP. So in the past, I would say yes, we did have a lot of visibility. We had a lot of processes that we actually were looking to try to improve on, because like Rob said, there's a lot of things that's just the way we've always done it. And like, well, could we come up with a better way? Can we introduce more, industry-centered data science, forecasting, machine learning? And that's like our goal. But as we're transitioning to ERP, a lot of the data that we're getting is different. It's a different level. There might be some aggregation. And this really comes down to why we want to curate, because let's say, Rob has a project and he wants data from NAVFAC. He wants to see all of the buildings. We want to know the age, everything. He needs to be able to pull data from us and trust that we're giving him something real. Like, this is the definition. This is how it should be used. Here's where you'll find it. And if you have questions, please talk to this person. My personal complaint is when we get ERP data, it's always like, what is this? How did it change? And they're learning, like, the process is being built on the fly. It's really being built in flight for us to figure out how to do new financials. But I believe we're going to be able to do it. We've built such a skill set already that we pray it will be a very easy transition.
I mean, things are always changing in the tech stack, right? Rob, how can these tools help identify and potentially mitigate issues before they actually impact timelines or budgets?
They ultimately roll up into BI dashboards or alerts and things like that. So you can create metrics or things that raise a piece of information to the appropriate level in the organization. Everything from just approval process and review processes that may have some business logic to them, to, again, alerts. All of a sudden, something that was supposed to be due in 14 days is now 30, 40 days outstanding. And how do you alert people about that? Now, that may be at the project level, right? An executive wants to look at more how their team's doing, right? Is there a team that that the number of RFIs is growing so fast and they're not getting answered? There's things that you can look at in projects that are leading indicators to where the financial and the schedule is going to be impacted, right? I can see if people are approving submittals, maybe an HVAC units submittal on time, and if it doesn't get reviewed and approved by the AE and the owner, that contractor can't order it, right? And that delays the project. So those types of things, those early indicators, can be raised and be valuable. A lot of times those are stuck in the contractor system. A lot of owners don't even track that type of information. We're seeing, most of our owners are moving that way, where they want to own the data and they want to own the business processes that impact their projects. But traditionally, the owner worries about just the financials, just the approved change orders or the mods, right? Not the mods in progress, not the requests and stuff like that. They don't have access to that because that's often a different silo. That's in another company's silo of data, right? So it's a challenge, but the ability to raise that's why you get a single source of truth. That's why you put in a project management information system, is to capture those things that are going on every day. People are doing their work. If you can make their work easier to do, you're going to capture that process, and you're going to have that data that alerts somebody or shows up in a enterprise dashboard of, here's where our risks are. So these are the projects we're going to go focus on. These other projects are doing great. We'll let them go. That team's doing great, but we need to focus our attention as managers and leaders on these hot topics, right? That's the value of having, like, kind of like, you're looking at your windshield in your car, and you can see where you need to focus, and you can see where you want to go, and you can solve problems. That's the benefit of having a single source of truth that you can use those analytics and use those tools on.
Priscilla, how about you? How is NAVFAC spotting potential issues and mitigating the risk from them?
So it's really been in the investment of the data pipelines. So as we move forward, so like the RFI pipeline, we have the mods one contracts. the schedules, the notes. We're starting to really streamline so that way it's, not just one group has exposure to all of the notes, not just one group has exposure to all the mods. So anyone can kind of pull and say, this is our single source of truth. Please use our, enterprise warehouse as where all of this information is. So it's been very helpful, but it's very overwhelming sometimes when you see just how many things exist in this world, and how do they connect is really something that is our big challenge.
All right, so I'm going to I don't think Priscilla gets to manage just one project, when we're talking about the entire Navy. So how do you ensure data integrity when managing multiple construction projects simultaneously?
So I'd say, I don't manage any actual projects that run out into the world, but for the data itself, so how do we manage even just like the data itself? It's very much talking to the data steward, documenting. We're launching our website, which is really exciting. If you ever have a chance to log on, I tell everyone I made the spinning loading wheel. It was me. Very excited about it. But that's the page. You can log in and you could say, okay, I want to see RFIs. All right, click it. Here's the documentation. Here's the data store. Dun, 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 dun. Here's everything, definitions, everybody. There's the current version. Here's what changed in the business process. That's really been the way that we've been trying to manage it.
And Rob, can I ask you how you've seen other federal agencies kind of tackle that data integrity piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think our discussion is in two parts, right? There's the business processes and how you collect the data, and there's how you analyze that data. And oftentimes that data in the data warehouse is across many systems, right? It's across the core systems of NAVFAC. Kahua focuses mainly on the project delivery side and the project handover, but then there's other systems we play with. But it has to be enterprise-wide, right? I mean, again, we have customers that are managing 8,000 projects a year, right? We have customers that are managing 5. It's a big difference. But the system has to support the smallest project to the largest project, and it has to, maybe that has to be a different experience, because if I'm a project manager managing 50 small projects, maybe there's 50, even $10,000 or $15,000 projects. They're just small change outs of equipment, versus somebody managing a new courthouse or a new embassy across the world. I need a different experience. I need a different level of detail that gets into that data warehouse. But ultimately, there is some level of detail has to be the same across all of them. Even though the processes might be a little different, you have to collect them, and the only way to do that is to systematize it. I mean, the Navy has a system, that you have to have something that provides that standard, or you're constantly just collecting, like we talked earlier, spreadsheets and information, and the data warehouse becomes, I always say there's usually a report that comes out, right? And that value of that data is only as thin as the paper it's printed on, because you can't dive down and see why is this issue? Why is this number on the page? Why is this date changed? Why all that stuff? You can't drill through and find the underlying reasons for that, which means you can't learn from it. You can't learn how to stop it on the next project and stuff like that. So, data integrity comes down to having those standards across all those projects, and then collecting the right data to give Priscilla the ability to display it and present it across all the different systems that the agency has.
Priscilla smiled really wide when you started talking about the why of the data, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity, Priscilla, to weigh in on what Rob was talking about.
I love the phrase, it's as thin as the paper it's printed on. That's so true. I think part of the conversation we wanted to have in rebuilding our data layer was to start with, okay, here's the foundational data, and then here's each level of how you aggregate up. So then, the person at the top will be looking up here, and then, if they, well, why? Well, you should be able to drill all the way down. And that is the benefit of, business intelligence tools like Tableau and Power BI. And so then my side is really making sure that as those things get built, they have access to every layer of that data. But I love the phrase. It's a great one.
I was thinking about or as thin as the electrons the PDF is built on. I don't know. I mean, it's like that's even thinner than paper, right? but the days of static reports are gone. I mean, we're all used to them, and Yeah, I have customers, we build custom reports all the time, but the power of the BI tools to provide the same information and get there faster and much more dynamic, users love it. If you build them right, if you make it a good experience for them to drill through, it's just so easy for them to get what
And
they want.
Rob, I'm going to pick on you for another minute. This has to help with different auditing, reporting, and transparency reports that agencies have.
Oh yeah. I mean, we probably didn't talk about some of the benefits, but there's things like claims that people do not want to have, right? I mean, and when you have, whether it's an audit or some kind of claim that comes in, being able to defend that or being able to show that you're responsibly managing the agency's, funds and stuff like that, it cuts the cost, it cuts the time. We don't have enough time to go through an audit. Most agencies that I work with would rather not do them. That you're going to have them, but how can you make that less painful? How can you assure the auditors that or the lawyers that have to dig through how we're going to defend a claim? If you can give them an easy set of data or dashboards or information to go through and run through, you've saved your agency a lot of dollars, right? I think it's why look at financial systems. 60 years ago, you'd go look at a accounting your accounting group in your organization, there'd be 100 desks there. Now there's way less, right? Because of the automation, and everything's very easy to, well, actually, for financial people, it's very easy to go through. Not for me, I'm just a construction guy, but these tools give our teams, who are always overstressed, the ability to do the right things. And then when it comes time to something that could be a big problem, they have the data, they have the information, and they may not win, right? There may be a problem but they can mitigate the cost of that. So
Priscilla, I'm going to turn to you and ask you for maybe some unexpected efficiencies that you found, because I've never met anyone who worked in government who said, I have all the resources that I need. So everyone's doing more with less. And I'm just curious if you've found, efficiencies responding to data calls or working with your inspector general or whomever who likes to hold you accountable.
Yeah, really working with more for less. It's been very difficult. I think in general, because there's a lot of systems. I think overall we manage about 30 business systems, and each one is more than one business process. So you have a ton to go through. I think so the way our team really have been managing it. So for myself, I've been doing a lot of the intake. So we're trying to build up people that can speak the same language of all the business. Those true data scientists of that role would be someone who can speak both the business, the machine learning, the technology, end to end. And it's a huge, huge responsibility because it's difficult to speak at every different level proficiently. So we've been really focused on training people like that can go forward in our own communities and say, how do I do this? Okay, let's come back and work with that. But it does mean that our team, right, myself, have had to learn a lot of things that I didn't really expect to learn, but I also really enjoyed. So I feel like when we're hiring, it's very much we're looking for people who really want to get out there and learn something new. I never coded a front end before, and this was an opportunity for me to learn, and I enjoyed it because it was just, well, let's see what we can build. And I think getting the right group together, finding the right, mission, and this is a good one, right? How do we get data better to our stakeholders, to everybody, and top to bottom? That has really been the help. And I'll say automation, machine learning, AI, it cuts a lot of effort out. So the way we can trim and save people time has really paid off.
Are there particular examples you can give about how you're using AI and automations that are saving you time?
So there's a large effort to, so not particularly in project management yet, but for our asset management, that has been where we've seen the most solutions there. One of them is like more anomaly detection. So at least for those pipelines, we've already developed them. They're ready to go. They've have the proper governance. And so in that case, we were able to just embed machine learning algorithms into that. And so then when people pull their assets, they could see, hey, you've been flagged for ABC. And we like to include a lot of details from like SHAP. So it's not just, hey, you've been flagged, it's, why, so that it's, increasing transparency, not just trying to poke at different people.
All right, Rob, I'm going to pick on you again. How are you seeing AI and machine learning being used in capital projects?
So on the federal side, well, a couple things. One, it's very, very interesting, right? You could, from helping somebody respond to an RFI and looking through your information and how you've responded to before to exposing, it's just a different way of I mean, it opens up a lot, but you need that. One of the challenges we're having right now is we work with individual agencies, right? And each agency, a small agency, really doesn't have enough data. Or actually, a lot of agencies don't have the data like NAVFAC has already, right? And so, how do you can't even start applying a AI tool or machine learning until you get enough data to do it with, and that's a challenge, right? And how do you, we're FedRAMP certified, CMMC, those restrictions, when we get our ATOs from our agencies, we can't share data. We can't aggregate data. We can't do certain things. So we're trying to look at how do you do that in the federal space, and it's going to take an IT organization inside one of the agencies saying, "Here's what you're allowed to do," right? And again, an organization like GSA and NAVFAC and the AFCEC, they're big enough. They're going to get enough data, whether they have it now or they're going to do it over time. But a Federal Reserve Board may never have enough data inside their one instance to be able to do that. And that's one of the challenges I think we see, and we want to work with our existing federal customers to how do we provide really that benefit to everyone, not just the biggest agencies. And I think that's a challenge. There's challenges once we get into the security and the data security and the data ownership that agencies demand. So I don't know if I answered your question, but we are exploring it in our commercial side, and love some of the things that we're coming up with and that we're doing. We are also trying to figure out how we apply that into our federal network, which has different controls and different rules than. And I don't know if Priscilla has an answer to that, but I'd love to hear it.
Yep, he tagged you in, Priscilla. Go.
Yeah, to piggyback, I guess one of the things I probably should have included in my intro is our enterprise data warehouse lives within the NAVFAC Information Technology Center. So yeah, we've built an IT center. We have people who manage the ATOs, project management, the cybersecurity, like all of it. And I could not do my job if that was not already there. There's no shot, like we would go nowhere, we'd be dead in the water. So one thing that I've seen just generally across the Navy is I feel that NAVFAC has had really significant foresight in developing this pretty early. So now we're at an opportunity where we already have this infrastructure. Now we have the opportunity to go to the cloud. Great, let's do it. And that has really been a fantastic step forward. So we have the tools, we have the technology. It's like literally just let's reel in the people and make it happen.
I love it. They got the tools, they got the talent. Rob, I'm coming back to you because I want you to share what do you want our audience to take away from this conversation?
I think, this is a very exciting time. Construction's always been hit with, we're behind the times and that kind of stuff. There's some great technology out there. There's some very innovative stuff. A lot of very interesting point solutions in the field, and from flying drones and doing quality checks to, there's all kinds of great stuff out there. It's how we pull it together. How do we create that foundational platform that allows you to do the basics, the block and tackling of projects? How do I plan a project? How do I get design reviews done? How do I manage the cost, the budget, the schedule? And then how do I integrate, wonderful new technologies like AI, machine learning, and all these different point solutions that probably will never be in an enterprise system. All the technologies that are interesting, getting all that to live, to pull it in. And then, one of the things Priscilla talked about is what the Navy has is really, the data warehouse, a data lake, whatever you want to call it, that data can be pulled from a central system. We have customers that, are using 80 different technologies on a construction site. Well, you can't integrate 80 different technologies, right? You have to have some place that data gets to, that the data you need gets to, that you can pull into that master data lake or data warehouse across all your core systems. And that is where we see, I mean, it's not the sexiest innovation, but that's what owners are doing, that the owners are starting to do. I mean, and some of our customers, again, like NAVFAC's done it for years, GSA's done it for years. They've just switched technologies over time. It's getting those core, that block and tackling done, and then opening up innovation and being able to be agile. Our business is going to change, or my customer's business is going to change over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. The system they implement today, they don't want to be locked into today's stuff. They want to see it evolve, and they want to see that, there's going to be a whole nother set of types of data that Priscilla doesn't have in her data warehouse right now. 5 years, somebody's going to say, this data we need in the warehouse. Well, the systems that you collect all that data from need to be able to expand and meet the needs of those clients. So that might have been too long of a takeaway. I apologize, but
No apology necessary, Rob. Priscilla, your final thoughts or takeaways you want the audience to have?
The tools of data and AI, machine learning, they're only going to be more important as things will only grow. And like you said, the technology changes all the time. So I think my takeaway, at least in my experience of seeing it at NAVFAC and how we're moving, is to be flexible. Understand that the goal, the mission is the primary goal. Like that's your North Star. How you get there might vary, might change, and be comfortable with learning on the fly. And I personally think that's my favorite skill that I have is, let's figure it out. And, what's the worst that can happen? And I say the worst because I program. So if it doesn't work, I just change the code and run it again. I'm not working on an actual building, but I think that the skills and the opportunities we have will only grow. So it's important to keep it in mind that flexibility is key.
I mean, I think a little flexibility goes a long way, right? Whatever your discipline is, right? So unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Priscilla and Rob, you have been fantastic guests. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to share expertise with us and our wonderful audience. I want to give a big thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Kahua, for making this event possible. And for our audience, of course, thank you for tuning in. Today's program will be available for on-demand viewing, so you can come back and rewatch or share with your colleagues who might have missed this. For GovExec, I'm Heather Caldwell-Ware. Thanks for stopping by.